The great risks taken by journalists reporting overseas is the subject of a new memoir by longtime war correspondent Jane Ferguson, who describes the intense experiences she lived through during her 13 years reporting in the Middle East. It's entitled No Ordinary Assignment, and it certainly isn't. Jane, thank you very much for joining us. I want to know more about your choice to become a war reporter. How did that come about?
I grew up, Mika, in a place where there was a low-level conflict ongoing. I grew up in Northern Ireland, where we, of course, had, an IRA insurgency against British rule, and it was something that was a really intense part of my childhood, but it was also something that people didn't talk about an awful lot. And I grew up this very precocious kid asking a lot of questions about the sectarian society that I was growing up in, and also about insurgencies. And in the process of writing this book, I think I've looked back at that as a formative experience for me. I've also talked about how, it was a fairly patriarchal place, and I didn't have a lot of professional female role models, but when I watched the news every evening, I saw women like yourself reporting the news, or traveling around the world reporting the news, and people really listening to their stories. And so I knew from a very young age, inherently, that that's what I wanted to do.
Looking at the incredible work in your career, 13 years in the Middle East, covering the Arab Spring, the Syrian civil war, the war in Afghanistan, South Sudanese civil war, and Yemen civil war. And also, you were the only American broadcaster to remain at Kabul airport through the entire evacuation crisis. I mean, time and time again, these were very dangerous assignments. Can you talk about moments in your career where you were in danger?
Well, you bring up, the fall of Kabul, and yes, these are dangerous assignments. They're also the moments that we really sign up for this work for. Essentially, I couldn't think of a story where it was more important to be on the ground, helping people understand, helping the American public that were watching our evening news broadcasts, what was happening to the Afghans there, what it was like for the American soldiers standing at Abbey Gate every night. So for me, that was a risk that was 100% worth taking, myself and my cameraman, Eric, throughout those days. It's also clearly an example of U.S. foreign policy playing out in front of your eyes, and a tragic moment in history. That was an extremely dangerous place to be standing every day, reporting from outside the Abbey Gate, reporting from outside Kabul airport, where thousands of stranded people were desperately trying to get in. I eventually was told that I had to get on the next C-17 plane out of there after 10 days because they were handing over the facility that I was staying at with the British soldiers to the Taliban. Within hours of getting on that plane, the bomb went off that killed so many American soldiers and even more Afghan civilians. So these are moments where you're reminded in your work that it's really just sometimes luck that gets you out of these places alive.
You've covered so much desperation, moments of desperation for human beings. And I wonder how you process that. You wrote about being in a makeshift hospital in Mogadishu and witnessing a baby dying on a hospital bed. And you said to stand in a hospital with a camera and not a stethoscope is grotesque. How do you process that feelings of being almost standing and viewing something, but not engaging?
This is something I think many foreign correspondents and war reporters grapple with. It's the fear that there is a futility sometimes to the work. Is what I'm doing helping? This is something that I've struggled with throughout the years, especially when you're covering famine. On the one hand, us journalists, we know that what we're doing on a broad scale is helping, that we're contributing, that we're doing something, but I don't feel like I'm helping this one person right in front of me. And that, I think, is what's very, very difficult. Most people look at me and they think the hardest part of your job must be the lack of sleep, the danger, the food poisoning, but it's never that. It's always those moments where you're fearful that you might be intruding and that you're not helping. And so I think it takes an act of faith to believe that what you're doing is in some way additive.
Yeah, important to tell the story. The new memoir is entitled No Ordinary Assignment. Jane Ferguson, congratulations on the book. Thank you for writing it and sharing your stories. And thank you for coming on the show this morning.
Thank you, Mika.